And a good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome on in to lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, powered by Gray Bar and driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike. Claibs, another baseball weekend in the books, but college football, NFL football, it's all in full swing. So that's kind of where the focus
Yeah.
seems to lie right now as we're counting down the days for the Cardinal season.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. College football and pro football are here. Hockey season will be starting up fairly soon, and you'll see baseball get moved back a little bit. And you don't have as many races as I think baseball would like to have, or you don't have the name teams that are involved. I mean, you think about the Cubs aren't in it, Cardinals are almost out of it. You look at the New York teams, the Mets are trying to battle in. Yankees are just, they're the Yankees and they're trying to hang in there. But I don't think we have the zest that I think a lot of people were hoping for with this season. And I think we're at a point where I think teams are going to have to take a look at how the rules have changed and and how they develop players and what their philosophies are going to be. Because if you notice, there are some teams that have already started to fire scouts.
Yeah.
And, when you start doing that, that tells you maybe they want somebody else with a new, fresh set of eyes on what the future looks like. This is going to be a very interesting offseason for a lot of teams and not just the Cardinals. I know John Mozeliak mentioned the fact that, this is going to be a very interesting offseason with regard to personnel. And, Gary LaRocque is moving on. There's a lot of teams that are in that mode of who are we?
No, you're exactly right. I was going to mention LaRocque retiring. The press release came out this past
Yeah.
week. 71 years old, has been kind of overseeing the Cardinals farm system for 12 seasons right now, but he will remain within the organization in an advisory role. No real word as to who's going to take over that. Is there somebody from within the organization you think is best suited for that job?
That's a good question. I think there are some capable people within the organizations that have different roles as we speak. But I'm going to go back to saying, who are we? Because whoever this person is going to be is going to need some help with regard to people who can develop players. I mean, we don't have a catching coordinator. We don't have an outfield coordinator. We don't have, there's a lot of things the organization doesn't have that I think we need to start to address. We didn't have those titles when George Kissel and people of his nature were around. Mark Dijon was an instrumental guy in that role. Mike Schilt was. I mean, there were a lot of those guys who understood what the Cardinal way was all about that are no longer around. And so you have to find some people who understand what you are and who you are and how you can get there the quickest. We've had this tendency, and it's a league-wide issue, where we rush a lot of players to the big leagues. And once they get here, a lot of them aren't ready. And I think the two best examples you think about locally with Jordan Walker, who's a prospect that everybody thought had a real future, and I still think he does. But then you look at a guy like Jackson Holliday, who was the phenom, if you remember. Well, we can't leave him down in the minors. They called him up and, it didn't work. Now they brought him back, and he's just a little bit better than what he was the first time.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the high end of the spectrum with regard to talent that probably needs to stay a little while longer. But we might have to go back to guys playing a little longer in the minors because when you bring them up, you want them here to stay. You don't want to put them on the shuttle.
This past Friday night, Claibs, when you were at the when you guys had live at Lowe's, you and Ricky Horton, you had Adam Wainwright as your guest, and
Yeah,
he kind of mentioned that at one point during the show, was talking about the importance of some of the veteran players having to step up and continue in the Cardinal way, and it's something he said that he's talked to with guys like Izzy and Edmonds and those types to bring them into spring training, bring them in throughout the season, and continue to kind of teach these guys what's expected of them.
Yeah, it was so emphatic that we used that portion of Adam's visit with us on our pregame show yesterday in our Inside the Park segment. He hit the nail on the head. We have to get back to having people who've been there, done that in this organization. And that doesn't mean they're threatening to take a coach's job or anything along that line, because I think once guys find out how grueling being a coach can be in baseball, they don't want to have anything to do with it. And I don't blame them.
Yeah.
But in this situation, to have those guys can rotate through spring training and, and and maybe do more teaching off the field. Those are the little things that we've gotten away from, and just having discussions. There was a time when guys would play and they stick around, have a beer, whatever, and talk about the game and talk about what they saw. Well, that doesn't happen as much as it used to. And I think there's an area where we've got to get back to some legitimate basics with regard to how things get start from when you get there till when you leave. So it's something that they've got to take a long, hard look at, and I think they will.
Yeah. So that as we kind of count down the days to the end of the Cardinals regular season here in 2024. Yesterday we saw Miles Michaelis get the start, lit up good in those 2 innings that he pitched. Right now, of qualified starters in Major League Baseball, has the highest ERA of any starting pitcher that has reached a certain amount of innings in all of MLB. That's higher than Patrick Corbin of the Nationals.
That's pretty hard to do.
I mean, the Nationals are a team that nobody ever thought was going to be doing, in any kind of significant race this year. And Corbin's just kind of a guy that they're paying a lot of money to, that they just throw out there every fifth day to go out there and just pitch. I mean, they're not expecting anything out of him, where the expectations for Miles Michaelis are much higher within the Cardinal organization.
Well, think about this. Miles Michaelis was your opening day starter in LA. And now you see where it's gone to now, and you scratch your head. I mean, the numbers about him this season are staggering. You mentioned one there. He throws more strikes that get hit than anybody. I mean, it's unfortunate because, at one point he was a guy that you could really count on, and you can still count on him showing up. He's going to give you a start. They've been shorter starts, but when it's all said and done, this isn't the season that he planned to have, I'm sure. And I know the Cardinals weren't expecting it, but it is what it is. And I don't know what you do about it, because he's under contract through next year as well.
And I mean, we sitting here and kind of looking ahead to that 25 roster, and it's the big question, I think, is what you do with Paul Goldschmidt and then go from there, as far as bringing him back or letting him walk, and then seeing where you are salary wise with everybody else, payroll wise with everybody else, as to what you can bring into the organization, what you can do. But yeah, the fact that Miles Michaelis is under contract, you kind of think, okay, he's fourth, fifth starter in that rotation next year, and hope you can squeeze a decent season out of him, better than what he's given to you this year.
You say fourth or fifth. Give me the rest of the rotation, because you're going to have Sonny Gray around. I'd like to have Kyle Gibson back. But
you have Eric Fetty.
Yeah, Fetty. So those are three guys. At some point, you have to look at a Graceffo or McGreevy, somebody along that line, and they either need to, get it going or be elsewhere, and you got to give them a look. I think from the standpoint of them paying dues in the minors, as long as they have, this is a year they should break through. And now you talk about the other kid, the lefty, that's really moved up the ladder. You have some decisions to make, because right now the rotation doesn't appear to be one of playoff contention. Okay, you have some guys that have been around, Sonny Gray, Fetty. I mean, but none of those guys are front end starters.
Right.
Okay, and you need somebody who can go out every fifth day and give you a legitimate chance. And then you need to have some other people behind him who can pick up and go from there. And I just don't see that right now with this rotation. But
what do you consider front of the line starter? Because I think Eric Fetty was brought in to be that number two, to be that guy that you brought in, to be that number one to start game one or game two of a wild card series if they made it into there.
Yeah, I would think he would be in that discussion. We haven't seen it here. I know when he was in Chicago, he has better numbers when he was with the worst team in baseball than he has since he's been with us. I just think that you got to beef it up. You have to beef it up.
Yeah.
And you also have some other issues. You mentioned Goldschmidt. He's played better. I guess I would be more concerned, with letting Goldschmidt go if I had somebody to replace him. And I know some say, well, we can put Burleson over there. I don't think people understand that first base is not the easiest position to play. Okay. I know some would say Luke and Baker could play it. Well, I don't know. I don't know if he's your guy. I mean, he's been around the organization for a long time. I don't know if he's a perennial guy that can give you what you need, because I don't know what his numbers would look like. So
I've been on the Jordan. I've been I'm all for Jordan Walker getting a shot at first. That's the one that I've been on all season, and I'm going to continue to pound that all off season too.
I would not be opposed to that. I think somebody who would push back on it would be Jordan Walker. I remember talking to him about that once before, and he had nothing. He wanted nothing to do with it. I think your point is a valid one. But if you're going to make that change, then he needs to be an instructional. Well, we don't even have instructional anymore. He needs to find some winter ball, and he needs to work every day on all the other nuances that come with playing first base. This is not a position you can just throw a guy over there and say, here, just catch the ball from the shortstop, holding the runner, making sure you're in line on the relay throws. I mean, there's a lot of things that go with that. But I would not be opposed to it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and he has spent a lot of time working with the likes of Willie McGee and to improve his outfield play all the time, and not only in spring training, but all the times that he's been up here with the big league club, that you wonder how much time has been put into that you would just kind of wipe away if you did change him to another position, and if that's something you're willing to do at this point.
Well, the decision's got to be made soon. And I guess the other question would be, you're moving him out of the outfield and you're replacing him with who? Who are you going to replace him with?
I mean, already next season, I mean, you have outfielder of Burleson, of Nootbaar, of Siani, Victor Scott the second. I mean, you have multiple outfielders already within Donovan, if depending on what you decide to do at Gorman. There are a lot of other outfielders there in the organization that I think moving one of those guys to first isn't going to hurt you.
I hear what you're saying, but and while Walker has not achieved to have the title of being that guy,
yeah,
he still has work to do. None of those other guys you mentioned have the potential either. I mean, right. Siani's your best outfielder, period. And if he hadn't gotten hurt, I thought he would be a guy that would be in the Gold Glove conversation. Donovan is serviceable, doesn't wow you. Nootbaar is a fourth outfielder on a very good team. And Victor Scott is learning how to play the outfield in the big league level. And it's interesting, when we talk about development, the things that they work with Victor Scott II are things that should have been worked on when he was in the minors. But they don't have they don't have those coordinators who say, hey, all right, here's what your first step should look like. Here's how you take balls off the bat. I mean, there are little things that he's working on now that they should have been worked on in the minors.
And I wonder how much of that, in the minors, something like that would get overlooked, because you look at a guy like Victor Scott and you see how fast he is. And to a certain aspect, I mean, there's probably guys down there that have great bats that you're putting in right or left field, and you're teaching them how to track a fly ball and how to just move 10 feet to catch a fly ball the right way and position their body to throw it in. Where a guy like Victor Scott, you're looking at him and you're going, yeah, you know what? He's fast enough. He's going to go get it.
Yeah, no, you're right.
We don't need to spend as much time with him. He's fast. His speed will make up for some of that. Where we have this one guy who DH'd all his way through college, and now we need to find him a spot in the field. We're going to teach him how to catch a fly ball. And that's who you're spending 80% of your time with, where you're going, oh, okay, Vic, yeah, okay, we'll hit a few, you go run to your left, run to your right, but for the most part, you'll track it down and get it.
No, you're right. You're spot on. And again, that's something that when they raise the hood on this season, they're going to have to take a look at, how do we get people here to stay? And that's going to be a challenge. So we'll see what happens.
Cardinals do lose 2 out of 3 to the Mariners this weekend. Day off today, and then back at it again tomorrow. They're home against the Reds, and looking at the rest of their schedule for the remainder of the season, Claibs, you got a good Guardians team coming in, and maybe you face Paul Skeens once. That's what I have to look forward to when I look at the schedule the rest of the Cardinals' way the rest of this year.
I look at it differently, but I understand as a fan that I can
Yeah.
understand that's how you would look at it.
How are you looking at it then? What do you when you say you look at it differently?
I look at it like I'm still a person who feels like postseason is you got to have a lot of help, but until you eliminate it, you got to just go out and just. I look at games day to day, not series.
You need a 5 to 6 game win streak at some point.
You're right.
That's, and we've only had one all season.
Yeah. We've only had one all season.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying it can't happen. It just hasn't happened.
Right.
And you have to be in a position where we went from saying, all right, if we can win series and split the 4-game series, we have a chance. Well, when you lose 2 out of 3 to Seattle, that means you have to go out and sweep Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have to go into Toronto, and you have no idea what that team's going to look like and want to be like, because you haven't proven who you are yet. I mean, your team that's been hovering around 500 most of the season, and there's different reasons for that. But when it's all said and done, the record may say who you really are. I mean, so they're going to have to do something that they've not had a chance to do all year, and that's one, as you mentioned, 5 or 6 in a row. I think their longest win streak was 5, but they're going to need 6 or 7 in order to actually have a legitimate shot, and they're going to need help from some other teams.
And that's pretty much what the Mets have done, winning 9 of their last 10 right now, coming off a very long winning streak. And Mets and Braves.
But the Mets have a really interesting schedule. They get Philadelphia for 7. Who else do they have? They get Atlanta. I mean, their
look at their schedule right now. I have it right here in front of me. So they are in Toronto. So they go Toronto, Philadelphia, Washington, Philly, Atlanta, Milwaukee. They end the season with Philly, Atlanta, Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So that's
they truly have their work cut out for them.
Yeah.
I mean, so I said this earlier. See, I don't think Atlanta's going to make it. I don't think the Mets are going to make it. I think it's an opportunity for the Cardinals, but the way they as you just said, they have to win 6 or 7 in a row and then get some help. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's there or not. I'm concerned, and I was talking to Ali about this the other day, and every manager's dealing with it now. Do you have enough pitching? Because you're throwing everybody in the pile right now, and then what happens if you get in the postseason and that guy who you thought could come out of the bullpen and knock down guys for you, you know what? He might be his innings limit.
Yeah. Then you're going back and forth. I mean, Roycroft and Kyle Leahy, they're just going when one pitches, they get moved back and forth for each other back there between here and Memphis. That's we were talking about Michaelis at the beginning of the show. I'd like to see McGreevy get another start and give Michaelis a day off or do something with Michaelis, who has that.
You have another decision to make. Lance Lynn's going to be activated here soon.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're going to a 6-man, maybe 7-man rotation.
Or you have something like where you have Michaelis pitch yesterday with Steven Matz just sitting there saying, hey, if this blows up, which it did, all right, hey, there's the ball. Go throw 80.
Yeah, no, and you know what? That's something that I felt that should have been done well before now. Instead of burning up a bullpen, you have 2 guys, and you say, here you go. I thought Matz and Palante would have been a good combination at one point. But, people do things for different reasons, with regard to trying to get people on the field and, justify their existence contractually. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into these decisions at this point.
Yeah. This is Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Barn, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura. Claibs this past weekend, a few different Hall of Fame inductions happening around the St. Louis area, as you guys had the Cardinals Hall of Fame induction, Matt Morris, Dave Duncan, two of the newest Cardinal Hall of Famers. And then also, was it the St. Louis or was it the St. Louis
I don't know anything about that one.
This another one this past weekend that I saw taking place too. So a lot going on here in the St. Louis area this past weekend. But also this past weekend, a lot of football stuff, and we will go over all of that when we come back here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe on at Claibs Online.
Nobody wants a surprise in their jelly donut. That's because the middle is the most important part. At Graybar, we're at the middle of electrical and datacom jobs across the country, connecting installers, facility managers, and business owners with smart solutions for their most challenging projects, which means stocking and delivering crucial products on time and on budget, with no surprises, thanks to our nationwide logistics network. Yep, Graybar does that.
Who does this?
Back here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on ClaibsOnline.com. Let's start with the college football. Claibs, week 2 is in the books, and the new AP polls came out yesterday. Mizzou moved all the way up to number 6 in the country after another shutout victory over Buffalo this weekend. Again, it's 2 weeks against 2 teams they should have beaten. But the impressive thing is that they have shut them out in both weeks. I mean, even, when Western Illinois lost to Indiana this past weekend, 77-3, at least the Leathernecks got a field goal in on the Hoosiers. And that one, that Mizzou hasn't even allowed that yet this year. And I think that is one of the reasons why they've made the significant jump up in the polls.
Well, as you know, I have no stock. I have no interest in polls at this time of the year. When we start playing legitimate teams, that's when I'll start to have greater interest. And I've said this to you before. I don't think you can take a Missouri or any of these other schools serious until they start to toughen up their schedule. Now, I know they're going to play Boston College this week, and that's certainly an upgrade over these other 2 blood donors that they played. And I just don't know how anyone can rank anyone at this time of the year. And I think the best example was, Notre Dame loses to Northern Illinois. And again, they were supposed to be a blood donor, but they came into the game being ranked, 5th in the country? How can you be ranked 5th in the country? I think rankings are total bullshit. All right. I have no interest in them because I don't think we really know who anybody is. And especially when you have the portal, you have the NIL recruitment element. There's just too many moving parts to tell you who anybody is at this point. So I don't even know why people have rankings, because nobody knows who's really good. Now, I give Texas a lot of credit for going into Michigan. Now, Michigan was the national champion. They've lost a lot of people along the way, including their coach. But, they have a more credible situation than Buffalo or whoever Missouri played the week before. And Missouri's not alone. Somebody thought Lindenwood was a good idea to play Kansas. And I'm not saying Kansas is good, but point being, and I understand that these games you put on the schedule, gives you a look at your team and all that kind of stuff. But to be raising flags and hallelujah because we're ranked in the top 10 when you haven't played anybody, I just have no time for that.
But you still go out there and you look at the level of some of these teams. Buffalo's, are they in the MAC? Are they in the?
Yeah, I believe so.
In the MAC, Notre Dame welcomed in a MAC team this past weekend and got beat. Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame in South Bend this past weekend, and that's significant. If you want to tout how good Notre Dame is and talk about how they should be a lock for this new college football playoff format every year because of the schedule they play, and they're not in a conference, and they should beat a team like Northern Illinois 10 out of 10 times. And for Northern Illinois to go into that stadium in that environment and beat them, that says a lot about, kind of how some of these teams should be viewed. And you look at Notre Dame and maybe, they the rankings came out too early, and maybe they aren't as good as we thought they were.
So to kind of go where you're going with this, these schools, the Northern Illinois and the Buffaloes, they're playing the name, not the team. And Notre Dame always gets a pass because of this tradition. I'm trying to remember the last time they won a national championship, or let alone play for one.
They played one recently. I feel like they've played in one in the last 10 years.
Well, yeah, it was when they had Manti Te'o. Remember him? And he got catfished.
God, I feel like it was more recently than that.
What?
I'll look that up. You keep talking.
No, I think what you're thinking, they were in the playoffs with Brian Kelly. They went and they got waxed. They got clobbered. They win the playoffs. They may have been for the national championship, but I'm almost certain it was a semifinal game. But they got blown out. Maybe was it LSU? Somebody.
For some reason, I was thinking they lost. Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. But you go to your point. Yeah.
So what happens? We get enamored with the name of the school because of their alleged tradition, instead of looking at the team. And when the best example is if you were playing marbles and Notre Dame was on your schedule, we playing Notre Dame for marbles. And maybe and Notre Dame is not good at every sport, but it's the name that people hang their hat on. And it's the same thing with other schools. When you think football, Michigan or Texas or Oklahoma, Alabama, those teams have the name, but we don't know what the team is. And the reason why I use that term is because when you have so many moving parts these days with coaches and players, and don't forget, coordinators are moving around at a pretty good pace themselves. You don't know. You're playing the name. You're not playing the team. And so for Northern Illinois to have that on their resume, hey, I tip my cap to them. They got a good paycheck out of it, and certainly it will help them down the road. But let's face it, Northern Illinois was not put on the schedule because Notre Dame was looking for a tough game. Notre Dame could have found a lot of teams that had better credentials than Northern Illinois. Now, Northern Illinois went in and did their business and won the game, and I salute them for it. But they weren't put on the schedule because Notre Dame was looking for somebody tough to play.
So it was. It's been a lot longer. I think this is even before Manti Te'o. 2012 was the last time Notre Dame was in a national championship game. That was I guess the 2013 national championship game, 2012 season. They lost to Alabama 42-14.
Mm-hmm.
One.
Yeah, so. If I recall that one was, I think had Nick Saban been, Nick Saban could have hung a whole lot more on Notre Dame that night. So going back to my point, how relevant are these schools at this point? And Notre Dame is strictly ranked on name, not team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the most part, yeah, they are. So the other one, Penn State struggled a little bit this past weekend in their game. Oregon struggled a little bit in their game, which is again reasons why I think Mizzou jumped up as much as they did.
Mm-hmm.
Because if those teams are struggling against the opponents that they're bringing in week 2, and Mizzou just went out and it was a dominant performance by them.
Ask you something. It's interesting you put it in that frame. What happens if Boston College comes in and Missouri wins 21-17? Does Missouri move up?
Boston College, I believe they are they are ranked now in the top. They are number 24 in the country right now. So that actually helps Mizzou, because even if it is a close game, if it's a blowout game, Mizzou jumps up to number 4, number 5. If Mizzou blows Boston College out too. I'm just in the AP polls. Yes, I think they move. They bump up another spot regardless of what happens in front of them if they blow a team out. If it's a close win, then they stay at 6, and they don't do anything if nobody does anything in front of them. But now that Boston College has a number next to their name, a close victory is still a victory. Now it's a victory against a ranked team.
Okay, I'm not going to repeat myself on my opinion of rankings.
Okay, but the thing is, the rankings are out there, though. So we have to look at them for what they are.
But here's what I would say to that. Do the rankings really mean anything now? Because
I think they do.
I disagree with you, because none of these teams, you have an exception from time to time where teams will play better rated teams, not ranked, better rated teams from a talent standpoint. But if that's the case, if rankings were that important, then why don't we have the bowl committee rankings earlier?
They should. I think after
You know
week 4,
why?
week 5, they should.
You know why? Because at that point, the reason why the bowl committees, the playoff system, waits so late, because they get all this dribble out of the way with regard to teams like Buffalo and whomever, because those games don't really help you. It's who you play in October and in early November. Those are the ones that's going to dictate on where you go and what you do.
I think very rarely do we see huge jumps and huge differences from where a team is in the coaches poll or the AP poll when those college football rankings come out, when the playoff committee sits down and puts their rankings together. There have been cases where they see a team's resume a lot differently than whatever the polls showed it, and they grant them, a higher ranking because of that. And I think there's also some play in there, at least there was in the past, where they would put, have postseason games within the season based on rankings too, and make it a little game amongst themselves, but putting a team at 4 and 5 and knowing they were playing each other the next week and saying, all right, this is your playoff for who gets in and who gets left out. But I think in the new era of it, when you have 12 teams in the playoffs right now, I do think that being as high as number 6 is very significant. I think being in that top 6, just in general, because one loss to a ranked team, like right now, they're ranked number 6. You look at who they have on the schedule in Alabama and Oklahoma. If you're ranked 6th and you lose to a program like Alabama or Oklahoma, you're not dropping out of the top 12. You're not dropping 7 spots out of that top 12. So I think being number 6, being up there.
How many losses can Missouri afford to have to stay in the top 12?
If they only lose to Alabama and Oklahoma, let's just say those are the 2 losses, I think, and it depends on what other teams around them do, I do think they could be within the top 12. But it does depend on other teams and who else has that. But those would be considered quality losses, if you will, if they're close games. If they are in those games and competitive in those games, I don't think that would hurt them as much as losing to, Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. That kind of puts them in the back of the line, and they have to have a lot of help to get into that top 12 now.
So Missouri doesn't play Georgia this year?
No.
Okay. See, I think because of your soft portion of your schedule, you're right. If you lose Alabama, Oklahoma, and that's all you lose to, then you're probably going to be in good shape, because that means some other teams in front of you and behind you are going to go down. But I don't know if Missouri is that good. I mean, because we're now stepping into a zone for the program where now, okay, you win a Cotton Bowl. Okay, now you beat a light Ohio State team, but you look at the people that they've been able to recruit, and you say, well, Luther Burden here, this guy there, and I think Missouri's really moved into the top echelon is because of the 5-star recruits that they've been able to get in. If they don't have a Luther Burden on this team, then I guarantee you Missouri would not have the eyeballs on them that they have now. So the schedule really plays out well for them, because Alabama, Oklahoma are the only 2, what you would say, legitimate programs that have some battle experience.
And they do, they do have to go to Texas A&M. I mean, they have to go to Texas A&M, which I believe is ranked as the hardest place to play in all of college football. I believe Texas A&M has the best home field advantage in all of college football. So that is a significant place to play. And not only that, you go in there and you beat Texas A&M at Texas A&M. Not only are you winning an SEC game, you look at comparisons to another school like a Notre Dame. Notre Dame went in there and won and then lost the next week. You have that on the same level, a common opponent, this common thing with another team that might be in the talks of that top 12 when you get down to it.
Mm, I'm going to chew on that one a little bit because I think you can't really assess that until we get deeper into the schedule.
Right.
Um, because we don't know how good A&M really is.
True.
And so I think, and remember, they're going through a coaching change, and they've done a lot of things in the offseason as well. So we don't even know who they are. So again, we go back to the name instead of the team that we're trying to assess things on. And I don't know if we can do that this early in the year.
Week 3, some of the top games going on in college football next week. How about this? Alabama travels to Camp Randall, taking on Wisconsin this Saturday. We're talking about, teams going out of their comfort zone and going and playing that. Alabama going up to Wisconsin to play the Badgers. Wisconsin's not a great team this year. Alabama's more than a 2-touchdown favorite. But that's still a pretty cool environment to see a team like Alabama go to that stadium.
Yeah, I think it's different, but it's something I've been preaching for a while, that your non-conference schedule should include a comparable conference opponent.
Yeah.
Now, Alabama and Wisconsin are on 2 different planes, but they come from legitimate conferences. That's better than playing some other teams that are closer. And I don't know if that's a home and home or not. I don't know if Wisconsin's coming to Alabama or not. So I wonder if there was TV money involved in this, as far as, the conferences saying, hey, we pay to have you guys play each other. So I don't know how that game came about.
You other ones, you have Ole Miss. They're going to Wake Forest. You have ranked matchups. Arizona, Kansas State is another one of the ranked matchups. LSU goes to South Carolina this weekend, and then Georgia goes to Kentucky this weekend. So there are some possible upsets with very good SEC teams going on the road early in the year. So
and that's why the SEC is the SEC, because they don't have, you have programs that, hey, we're going on the road. And those are the ones who get better consideration when it comes to the rankings, when rankings really come out, because you did go on the road. And I think we see it in basketball, college basketball as well. You go on the road and play somebody tough, you get more credit for that than playing some blood donor just because. And that was always, in my opinion, St. Louis U's problem on basketball. They had too many patsy games, and then they go on the road and get their brains beat out. And then when they come up with 20 wins and they're like, well, we won 20 games. Yeah, but you didn't play anybody. And the one team you did play, you got your ass kicked. So, you can't have it both ways. But I think what the SEC has done, and I'm sure the SEC encourages their programs to be able to go out on the road and play in comparable conferences and see what happens.
We will take another break and come back and wrap things up with some NFL talk here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe. Week 1, almost in the books. 15 of 16 games have been played. We have just one more tonight, and we will talk about all of them when we come back right after this.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
Back here, Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura here on Claibs Online. Before we get into some of the NFL talk, new show debuted on Claibs Online this past Friday that is filled with nothing but NFL talk. It's Talking Football with Mike Martz and Jim Thomas, and it'll be coming your way each and every week. Thursday or Friday morning is when they'll be recording new episodes. They'll be available soon after that, each and every week here on Claibs Online. Great to have JT on the team, and also Coach Mike Martz.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to be able to work with those two. I've known them both for a long time, and I've always found Mike Martz to be very intriguing for a lot of different reasons. I think he's an excellent football mind, and his coaching skills I would never question. And to have him talk about the game in a very raw and unfiltered manner, gives people an inside look on what this game is all about. Because while football is a fascinating game, and obviously the fans have supported it so much, but most people never played it. Most people don't know the nuances of the game, but we just know blocking and tackling or what a touchdown looks like. But how you get there, what's line play all about? What a defense is trying to do from one play to another, and the technology that's gone into it. And we actually have a guy who knows all of that and still keeps up with the game. I'm amazed that Mike Martz, and I'm sure he's had opportunities. I'd have him as my consultant. I'd have him look under the hood and just be a guy that would be a consultant to my team or my organization, if he would want to do that, because coaching requires a lot of hours, man, a whole lot of hours. And some people are like to a point where like, I'd rather do something else. So, but we're glad to have them both. Jim Thomas should be in a Pro Football Writers Hall of Fame. When you think about his career and what he covered 2 sales, a move, a team that was the worst in the league, and also a Super Bowl team. I don't know if it gets any better. And maybe the most objective, most respected writer we have in St. Louis.
Not only that, I just outside of the pro football stuff, the fact that late in his career, he made the jump to hockey and then also got to cover a Stanley Cup championship as well, and did a hell of a job covering the Blues his last several years before retiring from the Post-Dispatch. I mean, the man has done it all and shown that he can write about it all and cover it all too, not just a one-trick pony when it comes to football. So, how many football writers out there now covering the NFL day to day you think could go learn the game of hockey and be able to pick that up in a year or two?
Not many.
Right.
Not many. I mean, and that's the unfortunate thing about our business. We have become so sidetracked in just being a one-trick pony instead of trying to explore other avenues. And I get it. You do it because you like it and it's comfortable for you. But, when I was coming into business, guys were learning different sports, every day. And, and they gravitated to some other very successful careers in sports that they had no idea that they were going to be involved in.
Mm-hmm. Claibs, week 1 of the NFL started Thursday, continued Friday, and now into the weekend. Injury-wise, some more controversy as far as the fields go that they're having these NFL players play on down in Brazil.
That was an embarrassment, by the way. They were lucky somebody didn't get seriously hurt down there.
Yeah, you saw Jordan Love go down with a few seconds left in the game, and he's
out 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, and you're playing on football field or soccer fields that are not the turf, the grass is grown in a different way than it is for football players, and you saw an injury late in the game.
Listen, let me tell you something. This whose fault this is? This is the players. The players have to say no. Okay, and this field turf is just as bad. If the players continue to allow this to happen, then it's their fault because they have to say no. They have to push back when they have collective bargaining agreements, negotiations. They have to be more forceful about the amount of games, the playing surface, and things that they can control that will give them a better opportunity to have a more successful and longer career. I mean, the things we're talking about can be potential career enders. And we've seen the remnants of what happened to guys who played on the AstroTurf, the old AstroTurf. You show me a guy that hadn't had a knee or a hip replacement or an ankle replacement because he played on basically concrete. There are guys who can barely walk. And the players continue to look the other way. They don't stand up and say no when they should. Because remember, people come to see the players. They don't come see the owners. They come see the players. And if the players don't stick together and do a better job in making sure the environment that they work in is suitable, then you know what? They got no one to blame but themselves.
Very exciting game on Thursday night. Almost went into overtime if it wasn't for just about an inch of the toe, if half an inch of his wide receiver's toe over the line. And that was exciting. Then you had the other primetime game last night between the Rams and the Lions. 2 very exciting primetime games. NBC is probably bringing in huge numbers with their first 2 games.
I would agree. Yeah, I agree with you. But, tonight will be a different story because 11 million households won't have ABC or ESPN or any of those networks because of their issue with DirecTV. And I thought they'd get this resolved by now, but they haven't. There's going to be a whole lot of pissed off people tonight.
They still have about 5-6 hours to get that on.
Okay.
They still got a little. I mean, we've seen those last minute deals come into play, but we've also seen, I think, was it Fox a year ago that, or a few years ago, that they had it go. I mean, not only was it through the All-Star game and into like week 1 of the NFL, they were stubborn. They held their ground.
And you know what? I got to tell you something. I don't know about you, but once I didn't have that network available to me, I don't recall going to it more than 10 times for anything. I mean, I had just moved on from it. And I think in that situation, they better think long and hard about this because, fans have too many options now. And, now I know you can get it over the air. If you have an over the air antenna, you can watch the game. But, man, it's hard enough for people to go find a streaming service, let alone go plug in an antenna. So they need to really think long and hard about this because they're putting a whole lot of people in harm's way.
I've said this before. So I have Hulu TV. That's what I use. And after a certain amount of time, it knows what you're going on Hulu to watch. It gives you the recommendations. It knows what you're watching on what days. And as far as, I turn it on a Sunday, or if I turn it on tonight, it'll say college football or Monday Night Football, Monday Night Raw. It'll have those two things. That'll be the first two things that it's like, which one of these two things do you want to watch? It's 7:00 on a Monday night. Pick one. We know that's what you're here for. And those shows too. There's sometimes I don't know what channels they're on. There's WWE is moving from Fox to USA. It's not going to charge. I don't have to learn a new channel this coming Friday.
Well,
I'm going to turn it on, and it's going to be right up there for me. And
you ought to be doing commercials for Hulu then.
I'm just saying it's real nice not having to remember that. I had DirecTV for years, and there's still a significant amount of DirecTV channels that I still have memorized and are just burned into my brain that I could tell you what channel they are on DirecTV, but I don't need to worry about that anymore. I just turn it on and boom, it's right there for me, and it's going to be that way tonight. I'll probably be watching the Manning cast though tonight. Manning cast tonight has Bill Belichick, who I don't know if that's a weekly guest that they're doing, if they're doing something with him often throughout the year. They also have Adam Sandler.
No, he's doing something with CW Network on football.
They also have Adam Sandler on the Manning cast tonight too. So he's a pretty big sports fan. So hopefully he's pretty engaged in the show tonight for those guys. So I'll be watching that instead of the regular broadcast. As far as the games went yesterday, two things that jumped out at me. Bears came back and beat the Titans. That was awful quarterback play on both sides of the football in that one. Bears don't score an offensive touchdown, but yet still somehow come back from being down 17-0 to beat the Titans. And the Patriots upset the Bengals in week 1. And you wonder how what the Bengals season is going to look like after losing to a team that we talked last week might have the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
You know what we saw, it kind of goes back to mini camps and OTAs and all the off-season workout programs. It's useless until you put the pads on, until you actually run plays where there's some legitimate contact. You're going to have bad quarterback play most weeks until you get into October, because we have softened this game up so much that none of these guys are going to be dynamic for a while. And, some of these teams are on a shoestring as far as how much patience they're going to have with a quarterback. And it's not solely the quarterback's fault. This guy can go out and play catch with a receiver every day of the week. But unless guys are lined up in the right manner, where they're dealing with getting off the ball, getting off the line of scrimmage, making adjustments on routes, and a quarterback has to feel some pressure, then all you're going to see is guys being underthrown, overthrown. Bad decisions are going to be made. I didn't really see a lot of great quarterback play this weekend. I mean, and granted, here's the other thing. You have a lot of guys who are very young, that are playing. We've kind of gotten away from holding the clipboard for 2 or 3 years. Now they want you to play in as soon as possible. And I think this is part of the growing pains that come with that position. I think also when you have offensive line play, because nobody really dominated yesterday as far as running the ball. When you're just out there in shirts and shorts and you just putting your hands up on a guy instead of really actually getting into contact, It's not going to work. And we keep doing the same thing every year. And that's why I always tell people, you never wager on opening weekend because anything can happen and most of it's going to be bad.
I know you were doing the game yesterday on KMOX, but you know, Bryce Young was the #1 overall pick a year ago, and he was thrown out there, and the Panthers were terrible this past year to the point where they did have the first overall pick in the draft again if they hadn't traded it away to the Bears. Bryce Young yesterday, 13 for 30 in the game for 161 yards, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks, 0 touchdowns, as the Saints beat the Panthers 47-10. That's one where you were already looking at Bryce Young 1 game into his second season. You're wondering if that's already a bust and they need to move on from him after this year.
Well, is it Bryce Young is a bust, or is the fact that he doesn't have much to work with?
He doesn't have much to work with, but okay. I feel like we've seen quarterbacks do stuff with very little to work with. Like rookie quarterbacks have gone out there and done. I don't. Stroud didn't have. What did Stroud have last? CJ Stroud have last year in Texas? Because now he has Stephon Diggs. He has Joe Mixon.
Well, I'll tell you what he had. He had one of the best left tackles in the game playing for him. Okay. He had a pretty good receiver playing with him too, and his name escapes me. So he had a little bit more to work with, along with a team that had a better defense where they didn't have to march 80 yards every time they got the ball because they were getting pinned in their own end so much. So he had more to work with than
Nico Collins was the wide receiver last year for the Texans. Yeah.
So, I think when you want to start putting guys out to pasture, let's think about who else he's playing with, because this if he doesn't have help and guys that are able to do their job, then it's going to be a long afternoon for him and the rest of them.
Yeah, looking at who the Panthers have, who their offensive threats are, or who they even got the ball to yesterday, there is not a lot. There is not a whole lot there. Adam Thielen, their #1 receiver yesterday, who I didn't realize he wasn't on the Vikings anymore. So that's that just goes to show how little I've kind of locked in. This is my first year not doing fantasy football in about 15 years. So it was a different experience watching the games yesterday as opposed to previous years, not having players to follow. But I followed your, I had a similar thought. I'm going to do, DraftKings, the daily fantasy, the Sunday stuff, but I didn't want to do it in week 1. I wanted to see who's out there on what teams and who's, top targets and who would be good picks instead of just blindly going and making a team and wasting money on a roster in week 1. I kind of wanted to see what's out there and look at it after 1 week before just jumping into things. So I'm taking the same approach to daily fantasy as I would to betting on games.
I'd probably hold off another week.
I would think so too. Yeah.
I think you have to wait at least 2 for a team to play at home and on the road. I think week 3 is probably the more reliable week as far as trying to do this on a regular basis compared to the first 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Cardinals, as we wrap things up, Cardinals host the Reds Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week. Are you heading up to Canada this weekend?
No, I'm not. I was planning on it, but I won't be able to make it.
All right. So we will talk to you next time or talk about whatever. So you'll be back with the team when they're back home. Guardians and Pirates for the last week, last home week of the season coming up here in just a few. Anything else on your plate this week?
No, we've got the Reds in town, and then the Cardinals hit the road as you mentioned, and we got a few other things we're working on, but that's all for now.
All right. Looking forward to a Daily Cards Live later today. Myself and Bob Ramsey have those all week long. On top of that, a new edition of Talking Football with Mike Martz and Jim Thomas. And Claibs, I think Andy Hanselman and I are going to do a food review later this week. New collaboration in the world of food between Oreos and Coca-Cola. So we are going to track those down and sample those and put a YouTube video up on Claibs Online for that.
Let me get this straight. You're going to do a food review of Oreos and Coca-Cola.
Yeah, they Oreo and Coca-Cola, Claibs, have teamed together to make Coca-Cola flavored cookies and Oreo flavored Coke. So it goes both ways.
Not that I'm a consumer of either. I'm anxious to hear your review.
I was gonna say, I mean, even if you don't eat them, I mean, this is, this should be this should be worth worth trying. And if anything, we will try that for you and let you know how it is.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I'm sure you can't. But again, I need to find it. I need to track these down and see where they are.
So they
just hit
are
the
on
market
sale
today.
locally?
They just hit the market, I believe, today or this weekend.
Okay.
Is when they hit the market. Here I was trying to bring a picture up for you to show you what to look for in the stores, Claibs, when you hit up your local grocer this weekend. So that's what to look for out there in the stores. So Oreos with Coca-Cola popping candy, and then Coca-Cola that tastes like an Oreo. So there you go.
Okay.
That's what we have coming up on your website later on this weekend.
I can't wait to hear about it.
Until then, he is Mike Claiborne. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been another edition of Lunch with Claibs and Joe right here on Claibs Online.
Munganast St. Louis Acura has the all-electric Acura ZDX. The ZDX can go up to 313 miles on a single charge, and the DC fast charging lets the ZDX gain up to 80 miles in just 10 minutes. When you lease an Acura ZDX, you can save up to $7,500 with a federal EV lease credit. Or you can buy the new ZDX and get 0.9% for up to 72 months. Come on in to Munganast St. Louis Acura and take a look at the new ZDX for yourself.